I'm Sue Stockdale from Access to Inspiration, the podcast series where we aim to give you inspiration as you hear about the lives and work of people who perhaps are quite unlike you. I hope that their stories and insights enable you to transcend your day-to-day challenges and reflect on what you could be capable of achieving. Well, I'm delighted to say that our next guest in the series is Major Becky Frater. She is the first of the pioneers that I've mentioned that we're focusing on in this series. Becky has got a number of firsts to her name, including first female to pilot the helicopter maritime attack Lynx. She's the first female qualified helicopter instructor for the Royal Navy, and the first and only female in the world to lead a Royal Navy helicopter display team, the Black Cats, and the first female commanding officer of a naval air squadron. One of the things I loved about speaking to Becky was when she told me that her daughter asked her recently, "Mummy, can men be pilots too?" Because the only pilots that she has ever met are women. Now that's what I call inspiration. So welcome to the podcast, Becky.
Hello, Sue. So lovely to hear from you again, and you're looking very well.
With such an impressive array of firsts to your name, Becky, I'm wondering, which one are you most proud of?
Oh, that's a really good question. And actually, when you list them like that, Sue, I haven't really captured the magnitude of the number of firsts. And I have to stress that isn't in the Royal Navy. I've flown in the Army Air Corps as well. But I suppose the thing that stands out for me as being my greatest achievement, both in terms of flying and as an officer, was the first female commanding officer of 705 Naval Air Squadron, which was a few years ago now. That was super. I felt quite chuffed with that.
What made it special for you?
I think, well, because it was a career goal. So when you join the military, especially an officer, it's all about command and leadership. Also being a good aviator. So hopefully that also was warranted in my selection. That was my dream role and I managed to get it. So I was delighted. And it was also the same year that I had Lucy as well. So within about 3 months, I was not only became a mum, but I also was told that I was going to be a commanding officer. So that was really great. So for me, that was a bit of a real milestone in my career, a big achievement. And the job delivered as I expected it to. I absolutely loved it. It was really, really good.
Fantastic. What an accolade and a special year that you had then by the sounds of it. If I could take you back to when you were a young Becky and thinking about at school what you might want to be when you grew up, what was in your mind then?
This is a great question. I've been asked this question so many times, and I do cast my mind back to my young self, which was actually quite a few years ago now. And I honestly don't really remember having any set idea of a career. Now, I was in the Air Training Corps, because obviously I've spent most of my career flying helicopters and teaching. So I was in the Air Training Corps. So I suppose the military really was there right from the outset. It was an instinctive a part of my character. It's what I wanted to do. But to be a pilot, it really didn't cross my mind at the age of 14, when you're starting to make these informed choices, aren't you? Your personality is starting to form and develop, where you sort of thought what I wanted to do, because women couldn't fly then. So I was connected with the Royal Air Force for the Air Cadets, but there was no option to fly. And I can remember when I was awarded a book prize at school, and the headmistress awarded me the prize. I said, "What do you want to do when you grow up?" And I said, "I want to fly. I want to be sort of in the aviation sector. I want to fly." And the immediate assumption in those days, and this is like mid-80s, remember, was that I'd go the air, more of these sort of air hostess kind of role, as opposed to air crew and flying at the front. So I guess what I really wanted to do was be a teacher, because that's what I ended up doing initially. But just because the option to be a pilot then really didn't seem to be a realistic one. So why would you strive for it? But that's how much it's changed. You can't imagine young women being told that now. You can't imagine that mindset amongst young, my daughter who's growing up. She asked a great question the other day. She said, "Mummy, can men be pilots as well?" Because obviously early pilots she's ever met have all been women. So I think in terms of the generation at the time, I guess I wanted to be a teacher, which ultimately I have done through flying, because I actually instruct people to fly helicopters as well. A difficult question to answer.
And what is it that you love about aviation?
It's a thrill. It's an absolute thrill. I'm not going to get too emotional about it, but yeah, and it's different, and it's got a wow factor, but it's also incredibly challenging. It's an occupation that will bite you with any lapse of concentration. So you have to remain alert. You have to be on your A game all the time. And I love that sense of adrenaline. And there's an element of danger to it. It's a safety critical task. It can be dangerous. It's not, because a lot of the danger in it is actually mitigated through excellent engineering, excellent training and so forth. But certainly that element of excitement and buzz, it can take its toll after an extended period, as I've learned also. But definitely that's the appeal and the attraction. You get addicted to it. It's really hard to explain, Sue. It's an adrenaline rush that you just can't match with anything else, really. So, yeah, that's really why I've loved it, and loved it over a period of years as well.
You mentioned there that you had gone into teaching because the aviation idea didn't necessarily exist when you were thinking about your career. How did you then move from teaching into the military?
It sounds a really unrelated jump, doesn't it? Going from teaching inner city comprehensive in Bristol, which I absolutely loved, and really as a young 21-year-old was a great period of my life, actually, to set a certain amount of skill sets in place. And I would go back to teaching at a certain age, unquestionably, and maybe that will be my plan in the future. But I joined the military because my husband at the time, we'd met, we were engaged then. Some of his female friends were actually joining, going through Sandhurst, and sort of the first female intakes through Sandhurst in the early 90s. And they just loved it. They loved it. They loved the challenge, the adventure, the excitement. And so I joined the army to be a teacher. So I was sponsored by the Education Corps initially, and went to Sandhurst, having taught for 3 years. And you make a decision, Sue, and you know immediately it's the right one. And I can remember walking through the gates of Sandhurst on the 5th of September 1998, which was a Sunday, and thinking, I'm going to love this. And I did. And it was a really challenging, really rewarding year. And it was whilst I was at Sandhurst that the Army Air Corps then started opening its gates up to females direct entry. The education I'd had on flying from the Air Corps, Air Cadets when I was younger, all of a sudden it became a bit of reality. So I thought, well, you know what? I might as well just apply for it as well. I might as well give it a go. I've still got a place in the Education Corps if it doesn't come off. And then I just kept passing all the tests. I fell into it a bit by accident, so I was extraordinarily lucky. I never forget it. It was one of the most momentous turns of my life, sliding doors as you go through life. I loved Sandhurst, had a great year there, met some hugely inspirational people, but then also ultimately commissioned into the Army Air Corps. Only second direct entry female to have done that. So I still feel immensely proud of that. So much so that I got married at Sandhurst. We went back there to get married. So it's
a key part of your life then. It holds special meaning.
Totally, yeah. And the military's like that, Sue. You can't help it. It's not a job, it's a lifestyle. It defines your whole personality, your character, your outlook, your confidence, your skill sets. And that's why I love it so much. I won't be leaving for many years, hopefully.
One of the things that I always imagine, particularly being a helicopter pilot, is rubbing your head and patting your stomach at the same time, and many more things besides. But the idea of focusing on many things at once, the height, the direction, the stability, I'm imagining at night it gets even more difficult, and landing on a ship would be even more challenging. How do you manage to contain all of those things in your head and keep focus at the same time?
Well, that is exactly why I love it. I'd say flying a helicopter in its own right is quite straightforward. I think that's something you can pick up quite quickly. The thing that makes military aviation so exciting and so clinical and so demanding intellectually is the application of that aviation, the operational effect of that operation. And that's when it all starts getting busy and complicated, as you describe. And I suppose in many senses, the coordination is a bit like kicking a football. Some people just can't do it. And actually, you do see that in flying training sometimes. You see the odd student come in and you just see they're always going to be working extremely hard. Then similarly, you also get the individual where you know they're going to find it a lot more easier. So I suppose there's that aptitude, and hence why we have our aptitude tests. But ultimately, it all comes down to training. And that's something that the military do very well. The training regime and the training culture across all three services is right up there. But obviously, my exposure has been to aviation, so I'm clearly going to be biased towards that field. But I think the training that the individuals get, you almost train capacity. You almost train compartmentalisation. You almost train prioritisation. Because obviously you can't do all those things at once, although some people can. So what you need to learn is what needs to be done then, and sequence the events as well. So you sort of prioritise. But the key thing also is teamwork as well. So you're doing all those things clearly, but you're also working as a crew, and that crew needs to work efficiently because of all the jobs that you described, especially when you're fighting an attack helicopter on the back of a small ship, which is one of the best jobs I've ever done in my life, as you can imagine. It's really important because there are so many roles to think about, that is divided equally between the crews. But then also you complement each other as well. So teamwork's really important, but exceptional training and thorough training and uncompromising training too. So that's why I love being an instructor so much, because it's such an important role.
When you say that the jobs need to be divided up amongst the team, I'm thinking about who has the job of managing one's emotions, because I'm imagining that it plays quite an important role in being effective. How do you manage your emotions amidst all these other things you're thinking about?
I suppose when I'm flying, I don't really sense emotion because you're so focused on doing the job and being busy. And actually, because you're so confident in what you do, because you've done it 1,000 times in the simulator, there's an inherent confidence in what you do. That you almost want the challenge just to prove that you can obviously replicate it in real time. So I think in terms of emotion, in terms of actually when you're flying, operating, I've never had a situation where I've been conscious of emotion in that sense. You're trained very thoroughly. But emotion comes into it because we're human beings, clearly. In terms of just a dynamic in the crew room, occasionally on the ground, sometimes you can get emotional because you care about what you do. And that's good. But it needs to be vented in a very kind of controlled way. But that comes down to leadership again. And again, that's something that the military do so well. You work for a great commanding officer, and frustrations of emotion, in whatever guise it may come from, whether it's, maybe it could be something going on at home or something actually, within your workplace. And if you've got an open command structure, which is very much the culture of aviation in the military, then those frustrations should be articulated through. And we're really encouraged to do that. It's called just culture. It's something aviation really do well, and civilian aviation, I understand. The ability to be open and honest. And hopefully, if you can talk things through, communicate and be honest with each other, emotions should be kept in check, really. But not to the compromise of safety, though, clearly.
No, absolutely. You're making it sound like if you do enough training, enough times, something becomes second nature to you, so that when you go out into a real situation, you're able to handle whatever comes at you. I'm imagining then, what about the unexpected?
So being under contact or being close to the enemy in Iraq on a couple of occasions, I think the one that jumps to me is having quite a serious engine malfunction on a single engine helicopter, engine failure. That was quite juicy.
How did you get through that?
Well, I suppose again, a lot of it was because I'd done it before, I'd seen it before, and just a calmness, just a sense of calm, a sense of control. I think there is a personality type which probably suits that kind of occupation best. Not everybody can fly off the back of the ship at night. It does suit certain individuals. That is made absolutely clear through the training process. So whenever I've been faced with a real stressful situation, there have been a few, you reflect back after 21 years and you do think, wow, yeah, okay, that was quite dicey. They are few and far between because the aircraft we fly is so reliable now. And the thought process and the de-risking of actually the use of the aircraft is also carefully considered. So you're never put in a situation really where you should be so exposed. But you do generally have a calm aura about you because as a crew, you're working as a team and you focus on the task ahead without really necessarily thinking the full consequence through. Otherwise, then you probably would freak out.
How did you cope with stepping into that role that you were most proud of being the commanding officer in a Naval Air Squadron?
I can remember really clearly the first day taking over the squadron. I think I was the only female pretty much in the unit, let alone that one squadron. I was really conscious of it, I'll be honest. And I'm the sort of person who puts myself under a lot of self-pressure. And maybe that's what's seen me through success, but it also has put me under stress unnecessarily at times. I mean, that's definitely one of my weaknesses, there's no doubt. But because we have a progressive career structure, it's bottom feeding up. I actually knew the squadron really well. So I've pretty much done every role in the squadron before being the commanding officer, just through the way my career had been managed as a junior instructor, then a flight commander, then a training officer, then a commanding officer. So the sequence was quite natural. So I knew the squadron inside out, back to front. I actually knew most of the guys there anyway. But still, nonetheless, I was aware of it. I was aware. This is kind of the first time it happened. But to be honest, because I knew most people, it really wasn't an issue. I think probably the only person who had that concern about that was myself. But I think I would have been lacking intelligence had I not done, if that makes sense. But no, it was nerve-wracking. I think any CO when they first step in, it's nerve-wracking because you are there, you're making the decisions in that sense. And actually, it was only a sub-unit command. It wasn't a command at higher level either. There are women who have commanded much higher level than I have who might be able to answer that question far more intelligently than I. But no, because I knew the squadron well, I knew most of the guys in the squadron already, those concerns soon melted away and then you just get on and crack on with the job. And actually, as a military, we're trained to be as part of the team. We're trained to do it. So, and also followership and leadership is trained. So when you come into that role, we're already kind of in place. The team will just gel quickly because that's how we're trained to operate. So it was fine, but I would be lying if I said I wasn't conscious and nervous about it. But no, very proud to have done it, I have to say.
And another one of those firsts that you achieved was leading the Royal Navy Black Cat helicopter display team. Can you give us any highlights from that experience?
So a huge privilege, a huge sense of pride, but a huge sense of responsibility at not making a mistake. Because normally when you fly a helicopter, you're performing in front of your ship's captain, and that's it. But here, you're consciously making a decision. Sunderland Air Show can have up to 600,000 people there watching you. So the consequence of a mistake, I really sensed. Nerve-wracking. Not at the time, because you're so busy and you're so focused on the job that you're doing. It was only on the end of a last display, which was at Duxford actually, did you then have that kind of sense of, relief, we've got through that safely. But the actual flying is actually probably not as dynamic as it looks. Obviously, the display is designed to look dramatic and dynamic. Clearly, it's not, because it's not dangerous. We train and we practice it through. And the chap who flew the other helicopter, who was Black 2, while I was Black Lead, is a really good friend. So there was inherent trust there. We've known each other for many years. And by the end of the display season, we were almost a think for each other. My lasting memory, and I think it's probably true actually of aviation and military helicopter career, is just the sheer intensity, the focus and for me, to do it to the level that I like and wish to, and I always put myself under huge pressure here, but I like to be the best I could possibly be for safety reasons more than anything. It's just the sheer mental focus that's required from it, and that should never be underestimated. And I think over a 21-year career, you have your ups and downs on that. You have periods where you can focus intensely for several years, like I did for when I was displaying and so on. But then you do need that period of recovery almost, but then thrown back into an intense role again. You can't sustain that for 21 years without you having an incident. So again, that's something that the military manage really well.
I can imagine that anybody going through that experience, the intensity, the focus, the concentration that's required to then go, phew, kick back, go home, put their feet up and have a glass of wine. How does it work for you?
That's what happened when I was CO 705. So I just had a little one, little Lucy, came into our lives, completely unexpected. And then I was sent away up to Shawbury to be the CO, which was great. I loved it. But no, obviously an amazing husband to support me to do that. And completely. So it's a team effort, a family effort. So my daughter's now 8 and she's full of everything. So it's just been an amazing addition to my family, and she loves what I do. Now my daughter's a bit older, I've got more freedom again to maybe assume more intense roles, which I hope to do by joining the Navy next year. So you're right, work-life balance is a real big one, and some people are really good at it, Sue. Some people are brilliant at it. I'm really good at focusing on one thing intensely and achieving excellence in it, in terms of the multitasking, which I know women are supposed to be good at, but no, my husband's a multitasker in our relationships. I'm very lucky that I can still pursue my passion, which is flying and instructing people to fly in the military, and still have a wonderful family life. But that's all purely because of my husband. I think it's the same for everybody now, because I think most partners do both work now, so just because I have to. So I think that's true. And actually, you can see a much more flexible, compromising career structure now in the military to accommodate both partners working, which is very welcomed, which is great, which takes even more pressure off.
So I'm just wondering, if you were to have your ideal day or even moment of relaxation where you weren't having any intense concentration, no family distractions, what would relaxation look like for you?
So for me, my love, the way I calm my mind, because my mind goes 1,000 miles an hour all the time, every minute, and it's a nightmare to control it sometimes, but that's just the way I am. For me, it's reading and learning. So I'm doing a master's degree at the moment. In fact, I'm doing 2. And although for some people that sounds a nightmare and that would be their headache, for me, that's my relaxation. It's in electrical engineering. It's at Cranford University. I'm doing it part-time, and I do it as a form of meditation. That's where all technical stuff, I love it. I'm a bit of a geek. And it's all directly related to being an instructor as well. So for me, that's a massive energy release. When you're in your 40s, your life's at your busiest, isn't it? Your career's at its busiest, your family life's at its busiest. I think the demands of your family, because you've got young children spring up, elderly parents to look after. So I can't imagine a decade in your life where you're more stressed and busy than the 40s. That's been the case for my life. And so to have the opportunity to do a master's degree, which the military have paid for me, and I've got a wonderful CEO at the moment who signed that off for me with gusto and enthusiasm, to do that as a form of relaxation has been, it's quite busy as well. If I had a whole day to myself, I would just read books on electrical engineering to do with helicopters. I'm boring. I know that sounds really boring. With a glass of Prosecco.
If you were going to give them some top tips about how they might step out of their comfort zone, what might be some of the top tips or recommendations you would have for our listeners?
My top tip is just do it. I've seen this question before, so I've been thinking this through really carefully. It's so important to constantly step outside a comfort zone. I think it's something you should try and consciously do to keep yourself mentally alert. There's always a way. And if there's a will, there's a way. And if there's something you want to achieve, and it's worth achieving, frankly, it's not going to be easy by definition. So just stick at it, never give up.
I'm so pleased being able to speak to you today and learn a bit about your life and your experiences. So I hope you've enjoyed our conversation.
Oh, sure, I've loved it. It's been great. Thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed hearing from Major Becky Frater about her life as a helicopter pilot and instructor in the military. One of the points that stood out for me was how Becky relaxes by studying. and how it's important to never make assumptions about what works for you will be the same for other people. Please head on over to our website, accesstoinspiration.org, and you'll find a transcription for this podcast there. And let us know what was most impactful for you about this episode. We'd love to connect with you also on Twitter or on Instagram, where we are found at Access to Inspiration. In the next episode, I am down on the farm in Wiltshire in England with farmer Jonathan Cook at Dora's Dairy. He has noticed that during lockdown recently, it created the opportunity for people to reconnect with nature and to learn more about where their food comes from. So I hope you can join me then.